Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here, episode 2548 of The Tom Woods Show with Marc Tancer, owner of Taggart Trading. He is a full-service coin dealer, but if you want to get your gold and silver in particular, I can't think of anybody else I would recommend to you apart from Marc Tancer. I guess in the old days when Bert Blumert was still alive, I would have gone through his company, but that's a long time ago. It's like a lifetime ago. And Marc Tancer, in my opinion, is the reigning coin dealer for you and me. And so we want to talk about a bunch of things relating to gold. Obviously, gold has been hitting record highs, but there are also other things that are hitting highs, which is scams out there that we want to be alert to. And Marc has been on the scene for a long time and been around the block, and he knows what's up. So, Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. It's a pleasure, and it's super exciting to be on your show. And I'm happy that it's only just a little after 2,500, so that's kind of cool.
Yes, I think it's a terrible oversight that my folks, you presented in my School of Life program, but you've not been on this show. That is a terrible oversight, but we're rectifying that right now. How long you've had Taggart Trading?
I've been running it since January 1st, 2016.
Okay. So why, in your opinion, is gold hitting an all-time high?
Undoubtedly, with all the expectations that the Fed was going to cut rates, which they actually did. That's certainly one factor. Another factor just being endless deficit spending with no end to it in sight. And undoubtedly geopolitical uncertainty and people being afraid of both foreign wars as well as economic instability here with all the debt built up and the prospect for more money printing. I would say it's probably as simple as that.
No, I think a lot of people, especially younger folks, over the past almost 15 years, who might have been, let's say, in the sound money camp. And by the way, you can own gold without having an opinion on whether gold ought to be the monetary standard. That's a separate issue. But
Correct.
All the same, it tends to be a lot of times the same people who want to hold gold and who recognize the historic importance of gold. But over the past almost 15 years, let's say, I think some younger people have become more interested in Bitcoin than in gold. And there are people who think they're both useful, but there are some gold people who think Bitcoin's a distraction and you should be focused on something like gold. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bitcoin in some ways is accurately described as digital gold, but in other ways, absolutely not. The fact that Bitcoin is not physical and therefore by axiomatic definition of money, being the highest, being the commodity with the highest use being as a medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account, it can't be the money because it's not a commodity. That said, that doesn't mean it's not useful and that it can't be useful in the long run. The fact that Bitcoin only 21 million will ever be minted, for example, as long as it works the way they say it does, that can be as good as gold, maybe not as good or even better, depending on your perspective. But it's certainly, if anything, quote unquote, deflationary rather than inflationary, especially considering all the Bitcoin that's been lost maybe forever. The fact that it does need electricity and an internet connection makes it so that it's useless in many types of crises for which people do buy physical gold and silver.
I also think that there are people out there who would be inclined to, let's say, own either Bitcoin or gold or both, but they actually don't know what step one is. Step one, I think, is a little easier for gold. I think everybody will concede that. You have to find a coin dealer. Because you want, and maybe you can talk about this, but you want recognizable gold coins. You don't want collectibles. You want something everybody's going to immediately recognize, or anybody who's reasonably educated about gold will recognize. You want the coin, and you want a recognizable coin. But there are a lot of options. is it just a matter of picking up the phone and saying, I want to buy X number of coins? I call up Marc Tancer. Is that it?
Fortunately, yeah, especially if I already have a relationship with you. If I don't, we might do one or two more steps, such as, payment up front, or I might need to hold the metal for a few days to make sure that the check clears. But aside from that, it is really as simple as that. You give me a call. We go over the different choices that you have, unless you know exactly what you want, in which case you let me know. And I quote the current spot price of gold, the premium per ounce that you're going to be paying over that for the item, depending on the quantity. And we agree to the price. And then you send me payments and I ship out the metal, or meet you locally or at a show or something. And you hand me a check or hand me cash and I hand you metal. And fortunately, it's as simple as that. There are a lot of choices. So choosing which one you want might be a little bit more of a process very early on when you're first learning. But once you learn the basics, there's a lot of different options which are just as good as the other most of the time. For example, in the current market, between various bullion items, you really can't go wrong because there are very little differences in premiums, as opposed to many times over the last 4 years, there were large differences. So it would have mattered a lot more at many times in the last 4 years what you bought within the standard bullion options. Because if you bought stuff that was super hot, in the long run, you would inevitably make less or lose more than if you had bought the stuff that was relatively normal priced as far as premium goes.
Now, here's a question that I think people don't know where to get the answer to, which is probably I want to hold. I mean, I could buy stocks in gold mining companies, for example. That's one way indirectly to get involved with gold. But if I want to actually have the coin in my possession, where do I put it? I mean, where do I physically put it? Do I hide it around the house? Do I put it in a safety deposit box? Like, what would you recommend I do?
That's a fantastic question. And I have 3 suggestions and 2 things that I'm very against. The 3 suggestions would be creative hiding spots around your house, in your house. For example, my grandmother, I don't have one of these, but my grandmother had given me the idea when I was growing up to prevent my brothers from taking stuff from me. Drill out a little thing in the wall, a little fake wall outlet, put the plastic, 3-pronged hole outlet covers, but just have a little box in there with nothing, no electric wires or anything. That's just one example of a creative hiding spot.
Oh, Mark, let me interrupt you for a second, because I have a guy in my junior mastermind program who makes what are called diversion safes. And they look like ordinary household objects. You would never, ever think to look there. And one of them is a fake electrical outlet.
There you go.
Even if you were to unscrew it, it would look like there's nothing back there, because you have to actually dig down below. There's a little door. And I mean, you would no thief desperately trying to get through your house while your alarm is going off is going to unscrew that and think maybe he's got a diversion set. That will never. So even like if you're on a cruise, a hairbrush that's hollow, and you can put stuff in it. So just in case the maid comes in and wants to rob you, they'll get in the safe. They'll do whatever. They're not going to take your hairbrush.
Right.
So he's got a whole. I'm going to put them on the show notes page. TomWoods.com/2548. They're very, very clever things to have. All right. So that's the first thing.
So yes, creative hiding spots, and books might be creative hiding spot, but a lot of thieves do know about that. Not that they're necessarily going to go through every book, but I have a buddy who calls it a literary savings account, throwing cash into books. So I've always appreciated that. But otherwise, if you are going to do it in a safe or several safes in your house, I really strongly recommend using a commercial graded safe that would be rated by Underwriters Laboratory UL, TL15 or higher, TL15, TL30, TL30 by 6. Then there's TLTR, which is both tool rated and torch rated. These safes are where professionals with the right equipment, it'll take them at least 15 minutes or a half hour to get in. They're not inexpensive. However, if you're going to have 50 grand or 200 grand or $1 million worth of stuff, an $800 gun safe from Costco is just not going to cut it. The professionals can get in the gun safes in about 3 minutes or 30 seconds or so. So if you are going to have a conspicuous safe or even a hidden safe, I really recommend it be a commercial safe. If it's so heavy, it need not be bolted down, but the lighter ones may be might even want to have the safe installers bolt them down. So other than a commercial safe, I would suggest, wow, the thought actually escapes my third recommendation. But actually, I don't think I did. I think it was just the two that I oppose is bank safety deposit boxes as well as vault storage, third-party vault storage.
I knew the safety deposit box would not be recommended. So I offered it as a way to generate conversation.
Yep. And I have plenty of clients who say that they put their stuff in bank safety deposit boxes. And first of all, now given that we're such on a digital money rather and there's not much, tons of cash flowing around, there's probably less of a need now than there was almost 100 years ago or 85 years ago for a quote unquote bank holiday. So I don't think the government would ever declare a bank holiday these days and physically shut down the branches. But in the case they do, like they did in 1929, 1930, whenever it was, best case scenario, your metal might be safe in the safety deposit box, but you won't be able to get to it when you might need it the most. So it's kind of useless. It's kind of like having Bitcoin when there's no electricity or internet. It might be safe, but you can't use it when you might need it the most. So I really oppose putting it in bank safety deposit box. In addition, when I worked in my uncle's shop, we had a client sometime 2012, 2013. He came in and he had bought a little silver from us and bought a little gold from us over time. He had also sold some back. He got a letter from, I forget if it was Bank of America or Chase, but I believe it was one of those two banks. He had one or several safety deposit boxes with them. I don't think he kept precious metals in them, but important documents, etc. And the letter from the bank explicitly told him and other customers who had boxes with them that they're actually prohibited from holding gold and silver in the box. Now, that's not a government rule. That was just the rule from the bank. Did the bank want to discourage gold ownership? Did the bank maybe want to protect their clients from government confiscation or from mismanagement and thieves in their own branches? I don't know the reason, but I do know that they sent that letter out saying that their policy was prohibiting gold and silver. So you might not want to run afoul of bank policy. Theoretically, they should never get into your box, but there have been stories of box contents around the country being stolen. Now, as far as third-party vault storage separate from safety deposit boxes, there are really two different kinds. There are the depositories, which I've always been against because there's no privacy. The depository knows who's on the, whose vault it is or whose metal it is, whether it's allocated or unallocated. I don't really care. It's centralized, so a centralized place for private sector thieves, for government thieves, for corporate mismanagement or thieving employees to take your metal. And again, just like in a safety deposit box, it's not, you don't have it when you might actually need it. The other kind of third-party storage is private vault storage, which is not a depository, which I used to be very sympathetic to and still might be, but there was a case out in California a year or two ago where the feds raided an entire vault storage facility, and people had all sorts of stuff in there. But there were allegations, I think, of one or a few of the box holders and or maybe some of the management for the company that owned the storage facility, that there was some accusations of malfeasance, whether it was drug dealing or money laundering or whatever. So what the feds did, they took the contents of every single person's box, regardless of whether they had anything to do with what the allegations were or not. I believe some federal judge finally did order that everything be returned, though I vaguely remember there wasn't even good accounting of some of what was taken. So unfortunately, even private vault storage, it may not have been on the radar 10 or 20 years ago, but now it's more on the radar. So unfortunately, at this point, I probably recommend against that as well.
Folks, I know sometimes we think we have no choice. We have to deal with people who hate us. We have to deal with companies that hate us, or at the very least don't respect us. But we feel like, what choice have we got? So take big tech, Google, Microsoft, Apple. They engage in all kinds of shenanigans with your private data. And we feel like, well, what are you going to do? Well, you can avoid all that by not using their so-called free tools. Instead, check out Federated Computer. They offer a full replacement for Google, Microsoft Office 365, Slack, Zoom, all the tools of big tech, but designed for people who care about privacy, don't want to be treated like cattle, and want a great price. Everything's encrypted end-to-end, fully backed up daily. We're talking about private email, file storage, group chat, WordPress, all the applications you need for your business or team, all bundled into one easy monthly subscription that's 10 times less expensive than big tech offerings. You get unlimited users, fantastic personal customer support from real human beings, and the assurance that your data is your data and not big tech's. Visit www.federated.computer for your free 30-day trial and use coupon code WOODS for 10% off your first 6 months. So how about that? A company that thinks its job is to provide you with services for a great price rather than spying on you or shutting you up or manipulating you. Take your first step with other happy Woods listeners towards digital freedom. Visit www.federated.computer today for your free 30-day trial and use coupon code WOODS for 10% off your first 6 months. All right, so that's good. I remember reading a report at one point by somebody who was helping people with this very question, offering suggestions as to where in your house to put it. Because the problem is you think, well, I don't really want to have it around my house, but every other alternative is worse. I mean, just about is worse because at least it's in your possession. And the thing is, you can find places ain't nobody ever going to look. If you're creative, you can. I mean, just think about when you were a kid, you wanted to hide something. Like you would figure it out. So that was why I want to ask you about that. But now I feel like the only thing I want to buy is the standard, like whatever you call the regular, the most common gold coin. I'm not interested in anything else. I don't want Ronald Reagan's face on it. I don't want anything like that. I just want whatever the regular thing is. I certainly don't want to buy gold bars, but that's probably because I don't want to put that much money in gold. But you say there are actually lots of choices if you want to buy physical gold. So what do you mean by that?
So certainly the primary choices, I think, to which you're referring would be 1 ounce modern bullion coins, such as the American Eagle, American Buffalo, South African Krugerrand, Canadian Maple. There's many, many others. We could go on forever, but those are kind of the 4 most ubiquitous coins. And those, as well as the others, consistently at any given time, what you're going to be able to buy it from a dealer like me for, minus what you're going to be able to sell it to a dealer like me for, that difference, called the spread, is lower than the spread for possibly any other physical good in the world. Obviously, stocks, which aren't physical goods, they're just digital, they have almost no spreads, maybe 5 cents on a $100 share. But so physical gold, it might have, in physical silver, they might have higher overall spreads than digital goods, than digital investments. But as far as any physical good in the world, probably the lowest spreads, which is one of the things that makes physical metals so appealing. They might be up, they might be down, but you're going to take the least hit on that rather than a car or a piece of art or something like that, which might have much higher spreads at any given time. There are fractional versions of those 1 ounce coins. Generally speaking, the smaller the fraction you go, the higher the price per ounce you're going to pay. Now, right now, the differences in those premiums are pretty normal. There were times over the past 4 years where those differences spiked up like crazy, where I had to beg people to not buy 10th ounce gold eagles, for example. And right now, they're only a few percentage points more than the larger ones, so it's not a huge deal. But in general, I still don't recommend them as an investment in gold. Now, if you think you're going to want to barter with gold, that might be a consideration to get a 10th ounce coin or even a 1 gram gold bar, which is super small. But I personally like silver for the potential of barter. I personally like gold just for investment. That's me. I have lots of clients who disagree with me. So they shop the price around. And even if I'm making 6 points or even 10% over wholesale on some of these small fractional stuff, if I'm cheaper than everywhere else, they're going to buy it from me, even when they can buy stuff that's a lot less expensive. And that in the long run, they're going to make more or lose less in general had they stuck with the lower premium things. Separately, bars, they make all sorts of sizes of bars. They make the big 400 ounce bars that you see at the New York Fed or Fort Knox, assuming it's gold and not gold-plated tungsten. But they make super small bars as well, 1 ounce, as well as small fractions. I do generally recommend the 1 ounce coins rather than the 1 ounce bars. Even if you pay a little bit less upfront for the bars, generally speaking, nobody wants them when you buy it back. So you're going to take a couple percentage points hit when you buy it, when I buy it back, compared to if you had bought a coin. But you might consider bars in the case that the coins do go higher premium, which is very rare on the 1 ounce. 1 ounces at most, they'll go up a couple percent, but usually not crazy. It's the smaller ones that go crazy. A couple other examples that most people don't need to worry about, but quote unquote old world gold, late 1800s, early 1900s, weird weights of a troy ounce. So they're not even weights, but they do have low spreads. Some of the scammers and salespeople we might talk about later have pushed that stuff at absurdly high premiums. As long as you buy it from a legitimate coin dealer, you'll be fine on old world gold, as well as modern commemorative US coins. Same thing, odd weights of a troy ounce, but generally speaking, super low premiums. So it's a way to get into fractional without paying up.
You hinted at it just there, but we've talked about buying, let's say, gold coins. What do I do if I want to sell these coins?
Yeah, it's pretty much as simple as when you go to buy, you call me or other legitimate dealers, or you go into dealer shops or even to coin shows, and if it's over the phone, you tell me what you might want to have what you have that you might want to sell. I tell you what the spot price of the metals are, of gold and silver, and I tell you the premium or discount that I'm paying over or under the spot price for them. We agree to a deal, we lock in the price, and then if you're shipping it to me, if it's more than a nominal value, I'll probably have you ship it USPS registered mail, which is very, very safe and secure. It could take a long time, but it's safe. The metal will get to me. Or you just go to a show or see me in Palm Beach County somewhere, in a parking lot or something, and I write you a check or hand you cash or send you a Zelle payment. You hand me the metal, and it's as simple as that.
All right, so it's very liquid. It's safe to say?
Yes. So if liquidity is a reflection of how easily you can sell it, if you're talking about $500 worth of stuff or $5,000 worth of stuff, you could sell it instantly to me, to hundreds of coin dealers around the country, and be treated very fairly, very competitively, and get paid instantly on the spot. If you're talking about 50 grand or 200 grand or $1 million, some dealers are going to have that capital where they can send you a wire immediately. Generally, I'm going to have it sold to my local wholesaler and get a wire in that day and send you a wire the next day. Or you could put in my check the same day that you hand me the metal. The larger it goes, it might take a few hours or an extra day, but it shouldn't be taking days or weeks for settlement. That's generally a reflection of a scam company or just somebody who's floating your money to use it. Especially when you're selling the dealer's metal. When you're buying metal, occasionally there are delays in the market, like in March, April 2020, and a couple other times in the last 4 years. But same thing when you go to buy, you should be receiving it it should be shipped out within a couple days or so, unless there's upfront stated market delays.
I'd like to skip ahead to scams, if I may.
Yeah.
What are these scams, and how do I recognize them?
So there's a few different kinds. One of the really ubiquitous ones these days are advertisements on Facebook, as well as I've seen every once in a while, if I'm searching on eBay for something, a premium silver bar that I might want to put up on eBay for good money, and I might get generic silver bars as search results, Silvertown, Northwest Territorial Mint, a few others, where they might be priced either hyper competitively, like below, cheaper than a dealer would pay for them, or even $20. Silver could be $30, and they'll be running these for $20 or $25, which doesn't make any sense, right? So if the price is too good to be true, based on a Facebook ad or an eBay listing, the price is probably too good to be true, and they're probably selling fakes. Sometimes the picture actually has a fake bar in it, and I report it, and eBay almost never takes down the listings when I report, unfortunately. Facebook probably leaves most of the ads up, but it's a never-ending cycle. Pretty much don't buy coins from Facebook advertisements. I'm not even against using eBay, but if you're going to be buying coins and bullion on eBay, buy them from eBay sellers who have hundreds or thousands of feedback with 99.9% give or take rating. Don't buy from somebody with 5 feedback, or even if they have hundreds of feedback, but it's none as a seller, or none of them are coins. It's all toys and flea market stuff and other stuff. Definitely, that would be majorly suspect. I've seen 1 or 2 on eBay with from sellers who had lots of feedback, but they were selling flea market stuff. They were not selling coins and bullion, and they were fake based on the pictures. So occasionally, I even send them a message because they probably don't know. Usually I don't send, I just report it. But so to avoid those scams, as well as the scams I'm about to mention, just deal with me or other legitimate dealers and you'll be fine. Other scams that we've been seeing a lot of the last many years, especially preying on the elderly, are promoted by a lot of these sales firms, unfortunately, who advertise on Fox News and other right-wing and conservative and occasionally libertarian media, where they pay a lot for their ad time. How can they afford to pay so much for their ad time unless they're doing such tremendous volume, but such volume that I can't even conceive of, or they're ripping people off. Unfortunately, what they're doing, at best, they might be baiting somebody in with a competitive rate on a 1 ounce Krugerrand or 1 ounce Gold Eagle. So they bait you in and then they try to switch you not only into a high premium numismatic piece, but they're going to rip you off on the price of the high premium numismatic piece that you could otherwise buy from me or legitimate dealers or eBay or other online retailers and pay quote unquote full retail and still pay way less than these sales firms. A couple examples, I had read one online about 5-6 years ago. One of these sales firms was promoting modern commemorative gold coins from the U.S. Mint. They've been minted ever since 1982. The gold coins, the $5 and $10, are the same weight and fineness as classic U.S. coins, pre-1933 coins. So while it's a weird weight of a troy ounce, 0.2419 and 0.4838, at least they're based on the old weight. So they're not made out of whole cloth. So it's something. And as I said, when I have them in stock, I sell them super inexpensive because nobody really wants them, right? So they're not a bad deal if you can buy them cheap. But this firm was selling them at the time I had done the math. The person bought a couple $100,000 worth. It was their life savings. And they paid at the time $2,500 a coin. These were $10 gold coins, so a little bit under a half ounce of gold. At the time, let's say gold was $1,400 an ounce. So they melted for a little under $700. They were certified by NGC in MS70 or PF70. 70 is perfect on the grading scale, though all modern coins are 69 or 70 right from the mint anyway. So certifying modern coins is largely a sales gimmick or a scam in itself. But so I went to a couple retailers to see if they had the same things available. And sure enough, in perfect MS70 or Proof 70 holders, full retail at the time was something like $850, right? And this person paid $2,500 a coin. So they paid about 3 times what their coins are worth, or even more. And if they had gone to sell them to a dealer, they probably would have got around $700. So it was very, very sad. They didn't go to zero, but they cut their, wealth in a third almost. So that is one way to really discourage people from getting involved in metals. And it destroys families and it destroys people's finances. So it's really sad. And these unscrupulous coin salespeople, they don't care. They're making commission. And the ones that stick with it, unfortunately, don't seem to have much of a conscience because they're happy to continue making these sales and make people lose a lot of money. Another example in general is pushing quote unquote pre-1933 gold under the guise that it's quote non-confiscatable. So there was a law, which I didn't even know about until maybe about 2018 or so. So I'd been in the industry for a few years, that there is a law on the books, a federal law that declares all coins minted prior to, I think, 1950 or 1949 to be quote unquote numismatic. What that law does not do is say that anything that's quote unquote numismatic is non-confiscatable. There is no such thing as a confiscatable, and there's no such thing as a non-confiscatable coin or piece of bullion in the current system. So in 1933, when FDR called in the gold and gave people 3 months to turn it in, and if they didn't and they were found with it, they'd face $10,000 in fines or 5 years in prison or something like that. He exempted in the executive order something, I forget the language, but coins of special recognized value, effectively true numismatic coins, real rarities. For example, I'm sure in 1876 date, Carson City minted $20 gold coin. Even then, I'm sure it was numismatic and would have been protected from confiscation. But in 1924, $20 St. Gaudens, $20 gold coin in MS64, or they didn't even have grading back then, but a coin that was just a few years old, that at the time was pre-33, but only a few years old, that would not have been protected from confiscation because it was not anything special or anything of special recognized value. Even these days, right now, those things trade very close to gold. So it's actually not a bad time to buy classic US gold as an investment in gold. Usually they're quite a bit higher premium, so usually it's not a good idea. But the premiums had got much higher the last 4 years. But where was I going with that? They are, just because they were protected from confiscation, just because certain things were protected from confiscation at one point, doesn't mean that if they do it again, they would do it in the same way. But even if they do it in the same way, your run-of-the-mill 1924 $20 St. Gaudens and MS-64 is not special. It's not what I would describe as numismatic. I was going to say, even when they trade at high premiums, they still trade as a commodity. There's bid-ask spreadsheets from different dealers with, common date $20 St. Gaudens and common date $20 Liberty heads, which are prior to them, 1849 to 1907, and then 1907 to 1933 are the date ranges of those two coins. So common dates of those two coins in various grades. And there's a bid and there's an ask, and they're relatively close spreads, higher spreads than 1 ounce gold coins. But the fact that they trade as commodities reflect that they're not special. So if I were to take the language from FDR calling in the gold, his executive order, I would interpret that would not exempt lots of current pre-1933 gold from confiscation, even if they were to do it in the same way that they did back then. So not only do they fearmonger people into saying, if you only buy the modern gold eagle, it's confiscatable. They pretend if you buy the pre-1933 coin, it's not confiscatable. And not only do they, you're paying more than you should. Not only are you getting something you're not calling in for, but they're actually ripping you off on the price. It's not that it's that much harder to shop around price competition for an old coin rather than a new coin, but you could say it's marginally more involved, especially because of different grades. If you don't pay close attention to the grades, you might get confused. So with the modern bullion, that's not too relevant.
Hey, everybody, I guess there's one silver lining to presidential elections. They do focus your mind on the future, don't they? And we are thinking quite a bit about what might happen over the next 4 years. Well, as long as we're in that frame of mind, thinking about the future, let's think about planning for that future by getting life insurance to help our families in case anything should happen to us. I have tremendous peace of mind because my family is fully provided for with my life insurance policy. And Policy Genius has technology that lets you compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. In fact, with Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. They're the country's leading online insurance marketplace, and you can rely on them for unbiased advice. Well, be ready for the future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description or on the show notes page to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com.
Do we have time for one more scam type thing?
Yeah, sure. These are very interesting.
Excellent. I mentioned before Old World Gold, referring to English sovereigns and Swiss and French and Belgium 20 francs and a bunch of other coins, oftentimes called European gold, although there is Mexican and South American as well. So it's not only European, but late 1800s, early 1900s, super low premium, generally speaking. Unfortunately, Gold Line out in California, they were ripping people off on this stuff back in 2008, 2009. Long story short, they ended up paying into a settlement fund in California, and a lot of the victims did get some degree of restitution for this. But instead of charging 3% or 5 or 6% over the melt value, these firms were that Gold Line was charging 33%, 66%, multiples of melt, totally insane. And I say 33 or 66% over melt or multiples of melt. So when people came back in to sell, they realized, if gold stayed the same, they're losing a massive percentage rather than just 3% or 5%. So there's that old world gold, which a broad term, quote unquote, semi-numismatic. Anything, quote unquote, semi-numismatic that's being pushed by a salesperson is a scam. There is no such thing as semi-numismatic. That's a made-up term by the sales firms.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what about among the general public? Would you say there are any myths or misconceptions about gold among the average?
Oh, yeah. A couple, absolutely. One is, this is a specific thing, and then I'll get to a broad thing. One specific misconception, which the salespeople, I think, either play on or at least give you some fact to obfuscate the truth. There's a myth out there among some public that U.S. coins are exempt from capital gains tax. And obviously consult with your tax accountant, but if you're a U.S. taxpayer, as far as I can tell, generally speaking, you're responsible for a 28% collectible capital gains tax on any nominal gains you make on precious metals, which is crazy, but that's what it is. There's some people who believe that American silver eagles and American gold eagles and possibly other U.S. mint struck coinage is exempt from that. It is absolutely not exempt from collectible capital gains tax. Now, what is true is that they are not quote unquote reportable. When you sell to some dealers certain quantities of certain things, it does trigger a 1099-B or a 1099 MISC, some sort of IRS form that simply says, okay, you're selling 25 1-ounce Krugerrands or something like that. As I said, there's very few things that are actually on the list of reportable things, and they're very high quantity. So if you're doing $500 or $5,000 at once, you don't even need to worry about this, right? However, not only are American Eagles not on the list, but there's plenty of foreign coins not on the list. Something that had been on the list that I think I just saw in my wholesale network this morning may have been removed, but I think nobody really knows because the list that I have is from an industry group, quote unquote, based on their conversations with the IRS. So there's not even anything official. Nobody really knows. But the point is, as far as I can tell, junk silver, old US coins, the old 90% silver coins, dimes, quarters, halves that were minted prior to 1965, one bag, which is $1,000 face value of those coins, which is approximately 715 ounces of pure silver, that's actually on the reportable list. So that's actually a US coin in large quantity that is reportable. So long story short, just because something is not on the list, on the list of reportable things for large transactions, doesn't mean it's exempt from capital gains tax. Just because a dealer doesn't 1099-B you doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility to report it as income to be deducted with your cost basis and on which you would pay collectible capital gains tax on that gain. So some people think some people bought Silver Eagles from me when the premiums were super high 2 years ago, and they said, I had one person at one gun show and one person at another gun show within a month of each other tell me they were doing it because they're exempt from capital gains tax. So I had to straighten them out. Was it the salespeople telling them or some random YouTuber telling them that they're exempt, or were they from capital gains, or were they telling them that it's exempt from reporting and the person in their head switched that around and made themselves believe, oh, therefore it's not subject to capital gains tax? I don't know, but it's bad information that's circulating around some of the public. Another very general myth that spreads around the public, and I hear it at gun shows every once in a while when somebody's walking around and they don't even buy anything from me. They just look in the cases for a couple minutes and we have a 20-second conversation and they're always nice. And I say, oh yeah, gold is great. It always goes up. Okay. Now, in the long run, gold has done better than price level inflation in general. That said, from month to month or year to year, gold can go up and gold can go down. If, quote, gold always goes up, unquote, then it would not necessarily be a bad emergency fund. However, the fact that gold does not always go up day to day, week to week, month to month, makes it so that I believe that it's actually not a good emergency fund. And when I say emergency fund, that means you lose your job and you're looking for another job and you got to meet basic expenses. I'm not talking about a bug out bag contents or a without rule of law fund. That gold can be fine for that and silver can be great for that. But a run-of-the-mill emergency fund, because gold is not always going up every day and sometimes it's going down, I don't think it makes a good emergency fund. So, yeah. And that kind of translates to the fact that some people think it always goes up, has translated to a small marginal number of my clients have bought metals out of fear of the system and out of confidence that gold always goes up. And then they end up having to sell 6 months or 2 years later, and they break even or lose a few percent unless they happen to have sold at the right times, which more often than not, people are selling at the wrong time rather than the right time. It is what it is. that they end up losing money, and I feel bad for them. But they treated it as an emergency fund based on fear combined with myths that are circulating. So I always feel bad for that. So I always make sure these days that if my clients do want to buy gold or silver, I tell them, I don't make sure, but I do tell them that it's my opinion. Make sure to have your consumer debt paid off and make sure you have a cash emergency fund between cash and money in a bank. And then if you have that, then I think it's great to buy a little bit of gold and silver.
Well, do I have to worry about, I've never actually thought about this before, but do I have to worry about the possibility of counterfeit coins?
Oh, 100%. And I can't believe I didn't, I guess I talked about the scams on YouTube, on Facebook and eBay. But absolutely, even if you buy from a legitimate dealer, by the way, there's still always a possibility you'll get fakes. I know a couple of very good people down in South Florida, dealers with whom I get along very well. One of whom I've done quite a bit of business with over the years. The other I've done a little bit of business, but both great people who would never purposefully screw anybody, would never purposefully sell fakes. However, they do zero quality control. So as stuff comes in, whether it's from the public or from other dealers or brand new sealed stuff from distributors distributing brand new mint product, I assume everything is fake, everything is poor quality, poor count, until I open everything up and go through everything, make sure everything is real, everything is the right quality, everything is the right count. The two dealers that I mentioned before, they don't do any of that. They assume that, oh, it's a tube, it is what it is. It's like if it looks like a roll of Silver Eagles, okay, they're all real. It's 20 in there. They're all the same date. They're all in nice condition. These are horrible, horrible assumptions that I have dealers making. I actually have several clients who buy silver from me. They tried another dealer at one of the local shows who was actually less expensive than me, but he did no quality control. The two of them, the month after they tried him out, they came back to me and they told me they're only buying from me from now on because one of them, his roll of Silver Eagles was 2 coins short. That my trading partner, my dealer friend, he did make it up to them. He gave them the 2 more coins the next month. And one of them bought a couple of rolls of the old silver quarters, and one of them was 6 coins short on 40 coins. These are large, 10 and 15% we're talking about, right? And again, he made it right, but it shouldn't get to the point where a customer needs to come groveling back to a dealer and say, oh, you made a mistake. It should be right from the get-go. And my level of quality control makes sure it is. But so that's poor. So those were wrong counts. I did get a fake silver round in with a roll of assorted rounds back in 2020 when I was scrounging for anything I could get because there was very little available in March and April. And my other buddy who I mentioned, he sold me a roll, and I didn't even look at it until I get back to my place. I'd met him at his place, and one of the pieces was fake. It was maybe a little weakly struck, but it was pretty close to the correct design. Fortunately, it didn't sound right, and it was slightly too thick. It wasn't huge, but it was slightly too thick, and the sound was bad. So I was able to identify it as a fake. I actually kind of pride myself in not only my quality control, but my ability to spot fakes, both based on sound. Well, not both. All factors based on sound, assuming it's not a piece that's sealed or encapsulated. The look of the strike, the design on the front and back, the color, the thickness, all of these factors combined with weight. And I have a machine called the Sigma Metalytics Precious Metals Verifier, which examines the electroresistivity of the piece of metal. A positive result is not saying it is 999 gold. It's simply saying it has the resistivity of 999 gold, if that's the setting on the machine that you're asking. Unfortunately, I see dealers rampantly misusing the machine, saying, oh, it's a positive result, therefore it is the metal that, the setting says it's the electroresistivity of, which is not how to use it. So it's just one check mark. Okay, it passes this, let's go on to the next test, right? I see not only people in the public who own the machine, but I see dealers misusing it, and it really hurts. It really sucks, but it happens. As far as the risk of counterfeits is one reason I really recommend against the big gold bars, kilo gold, 400-ounce gold bars, even 10-ounce bars I think are kind of silly, and 5-ounce gold bars I think are silly. I think 1 ounce is the largest you should get in general, and especially because a lot of these machines won't shoot through more than a couple millimeters or so, and whether it's my Sigma Metalytics or even an XRF machine. Some of them don't go through, if it's like mostly gold, but tungsten rods inside, or a tungsten bar with lots of gold layer on it, various tests might show that they actually are gold. A specific gravity test, which deals with getting the weight of the piece suspended in water, dividing the weight of the piece by the weight of the piece suspended in water, and that's the specific gravity. That's really the only non-destructive way to be able to tell whether you have a piece of gold with tungsten in it or just a solid piece of gold. Most dealers are set up to do specific gravity. I've rigged up stuff to do it myself, but I can't do it at a show. So if you're trying to get rid of it instantly, I'm not buying a 5-ounce gold bar from you instantly, right? I got to make sure that it's good first. So as opposed to 1-ounce coins, I can very easily authenticate them, verify them, and get you paid right away. So you want to stay away from the stuff that is commonly counterfeited, and you want to stay away from the stuff that's easy to counterfeit and hard to tell. If you want to stay away from fakes, and if you want to make it easy for you to sell what you did buy.
Mark, what's your website?
TaggartTrading.com, also SouthFloridaBullion.com will get you to the same place. For years, I wanted to redesign the website, so it's more just a landing page still, but I do want to make it a little better down the road at some point. I should probably hop back in the accountability groups for the School of Life.
Yeah, there you go.
That'll be my next accountability project.
They'll give you some tough love, and you'll have that thing fixed up in no time. So
exactly.
I want to thank you very much for. I mean, you obviously, because you do this for a living, you have vast knowledge of these things and in great detail. So I'm glad that you were able to share this with my folks. I mean, a lot of libertarian podcasts are focused on the immediate, the current events, what's the latest thing in Ukraine, and I guess I've come to the conclusion I can't keep up with those people. They're always going to be a day ahead of me, and I won't be able to. So I still feel like there's a niche for the guy who, like me, is trying to occasionally, help people out with some knowledge about practical things like this. That a lot of us do want to own gold, but there are a few things that you should be aware of before you jump in. And I think you've given us a really, really helpful overview. So Taggart Trading. So right out of Atlas Shrugged, TaggartTrading.com. I'll put that at tomwoods.com/2548. And also, of course, I know, Mark, I can't get you to do it this year, but I know that in the future you were hoping to come on board with us. But hop on board at tomwoodscruise.com for the best vacation you've ever had. And Mark, thanks so much, and best of luck. And everybody should contact Mark and get their precious metals from him.
Tom, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a great interview. And yes, next time your cruise goes out of Florida, I'm in 100%.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mark. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.